Hello and welcome to another video, and we're going to continue our discussion about the Civil War technologies with the Ballistics. Now this is going to be majorly about the Inner Sphere, as they got all the ballistics. The clans got nothing, well, except for machine guns. But let us talk about those machine guns right here, right now, as both the Inner Sphere and the clans got basically the same guns. We got light MG, heavy MG on both sides. And these have practically the same stats, so very close to the same ranges, the same damages, the same ammo per tons, all that kind of stuff. So that's good, you know. They're pretty balanced between the two different technology sides. But overall, how do machine guns perform? Well, heavy machine guns are actually quite beast. If you have a bunch of heavy machine guns, like I was doing it with a arrow with, I think it was 6 heavy machine guns and 3 ER medium lasers and a light engine. If you get close to somebody who is open, they're going down. Heavy machine guns are very powerful. Now you may say, oh, but the range, it's only 80 meters, but it doesn't really matter. When you're in that close, you can just rip somebody dead in a few seconds if they're open. They're the ultimate finisher weapon, really. You get close, they're dead. I mean, regular machine guns, what? They only had 120 meter range? Like, so what? You have to push 40 more meters in to be in close with the heavy machine gun. So what? Like, it's not like the short range is really going to be a problem for them. They're going to be on mediums and lights that can just have 6 ballistics or something along those lines. And they're going to be great. But light machine guns I actually found quite lacking. I found that light MGs were just a little too light. Like, just didn't do enough damage in order to justify the fact, like, you don't really need that 240 meter range on them. You can sit back and you just be like, oh, I'm plinking you from a distance. So you really should have just been getting closer and using heavy machine guns. But maybe they'll be useful on a mech such as, say, the Piranha in the future. Which, what does that thing have? Like 12 machine guns on it or something stupid? Ooh. They might be useful on that because they're lighter. But as it stands, light machine guns, I don't see really have much of a point. But moving on, LBX for the clan side, not the clan side, the Inner Sphere side. We have the 2, the 5, and the 20 that are being added to the game, and I have no issues with any of these. LBX have never really been sort of the meta weapon because of the damage spread, and that's fine. One really interesting concern about this, and some people in the community have been talking about, is the fact that the LB20 is 11 slots, which basically makes it so you can only have it in a side torso. Now, the LB20 isn't like a game-breaking weapon or really powerful like the Heavy Gauss is. Heavy Gauss needs to be 11 slots in order to make it so it doesn't fit in arms. There's a purpose to that. But I don't see it with the LB20. I don't think it needs to do this. It would just be a whole bunch more usable if it was at 10 slots. And I know this is against sort of lore and all that kind of stuff, but it would allow people to side torso it with a light engine. It would allow certain mechs such as Centurions and Crabs and Victors and stuff like that to put it in their arm, which would be really fun. And I have no problems with it. It's an LB. It's not going to be OP. Just give them their LBs in their arms and their side torsos with light engines. They deserve it. But otherwise, LBs, they're going to be fine. Moving on to UACs, and I'm very happy about the UACs, as the UAC 10 and the UAC 20 burst fire, which is exactly what I wanted in my redesigning ballistics video. They went the route of leaving the clans where they are and having the IS 10s and 20s have 1 less shell, which works for me. Known bug is they actually have the ammo counts lower than they should be. I have them increased in the spreadsheet to where they should be because the Ultra 10 fires now 2 shells, but it had its old ammo count of 20 instead of what it should be is 40. So you're getting less damage per ammo right now in testing. But that doesn't take away with what the weapon can do in sort of DPS. It just means that you have to put an extra couple tons of ammo onto it in testing, but you're only killing 4 mechs instead of 12, so all becomes a wash in the end. The weapons are still really good. They're a little toasty. I found the the Ultra 10s, a pair of Ultra 10s to actually be quite toasty on a Warhammer. So maybe the Ultra 10 could be dropped down a single heat to match up with its regular counterpart. Just maybe. But otherwise than that, I have no issues with the Ultras. They've done them well, and I'm looking forward to using them, actually. The rotary autocannons are a little bit weird. Like, there are some issues with them. You hold down the button, and they start spinning up, and then they start filling up a bar on the weapon loadout area. And when that bar gets filled, your chance to jam kicks in. So while that bar is being filled, guaranteed you will never jam. And that's good. I don't want to jam with my racks because I just want to fire bullets all day long. But that's probably not a good thing for the DPS that these weapons can do, which is quite high. The Rack 5 has 9.6 DPS, which is really good. However, there's some just usability issues with them. The idea of the spin-up is nice, but it's a little clunky. I get what they were doing with the jam bar, is you start to fill up the bar even when you're just spinning up the gun and you haven't shot a single shot yet. They're basically doing that so that you can't have a macro that's constantly keeping the rack just about to fire, and then the instant you want it to, it's ready. I could see why they're doing that, but why not just have the rack start shooting immediately? Like, if you have those situations where I'm going to come over this hill with a pair of Rack 5s and say you have a pair of AC 10s because, you know, the AC 10 is slightly heavier, but considering the ammo load that you would have to take for a Rack 5, maybe it's about the same. You're more likely to just fire off your shells and then twist, allowing you to spread damage and be more effective. And I just have to stare at you and just DPS, which makes it so that I'm more likely to cord out, more likely to die. Like, if the instant I turn away, I can't do damage. So I don't really know if we need this spin up, if we need this thing there. You could get rid of the getting jam bar while you're spinning up, because there is no spinning up. I don't think they would be overpowered that way. Like, the only thing that's really going to make racks overpowered is if their DPS is just so goddamn high that you could just walk around a corner and as long as you're shooting, you win. But I don't see them at that point. If they ever get to that point, you just lower their DPS. They should be, and the only really situation I see these as doing well in is when you get ignored. Which, I mean, any weapon does well when you get ignored. Like, you are shooting at another person, and that other person is focusing on an entirely different part of the battle. So there's two people brawling, and you're just shooting into the brawl, giving support fire. That's where racks are going to be really strong. But as of now, I don't really see them as being that super powerful. But we need to see them in a 12-man situation, so I have reserves here, but I would change those around. And also, definitely UI change for this. That jam bar thing can be down at the bottom right, but you need something near your reticule for this. Just like sort of like the mask, how it's beside the reticule and not down at the bottom, is because you can't take your eyes off of your opponent when you're firing a weapon that has constant face time, because you need to constantly adjust your aim. But I have to look down to my right, register where the rack is on my weapon thing, see how far it is along, go, okay, I can fire for this many more seconds, and then look back and I'm shooting into a hill because the person moved and I wasn't looking at my aim. So put something near the reticule to show how my racks are filling up in that sense. That would be very useful. Also, if you could do the same for flamers, because they're kind of the same but not as damaging as a rack when it jams. Heavy Gauss and light Gauss as we move into the Gauss rifles. Very powerful. Heavy Gauss, 25 damage. That's a powerful hit. I've seen a lot of people just doing dual heavy Gauss on things like the Cyclops Hero or Maulers or stuff like that. This is something that does need to have 11 slots for the pushing it into side torsos, making it so you can't light engine with it. It should just be a standard engine with heavy Gauss, and I'm good with that. Because this weapon is very powerful. 25 damage for only 2 heat. Yeah, that's a good hit. It does have a lack of range, though, with only 180 meters. And it's an interesting one, because the range profile for the heavy Gauss right now in the game is linear, but in the lore it went 25, 20, 10. So it had sort of like an exponential drop off as it went further. So I'd have to run those numbers based on those ranges from lore and the ranges here and see where heavy Gauss is performing better or worse, depending on which range you're firing it at compared to lore in right now. So that's something to think about for heavy Gauss. I'll talk about something about the charging up of Gauss and how many you can charge at once after we talk about light Gauss here. Light Gauss, 8 damage. It's like a Gauss minus a bit. Like, it's 12 tons, which is only 3 tons off of a normal Gauss rifle, but it's like half the damage. So you're paying not much of the weight for a lot of the firepower. And the only benefit for it is like another 100 meters range. It's the same heat. I don't really see much of a purpose for the light Gauss. It's pretty weak. It needs something else. Maybe a tiny bit of increased damage. Maybe some more range. Maybe this thing's optimal range should be like 850, 9. Who cares? It's going to be a light Gauss. It's the sniper type weapon. Give it some more speed. Like 2,000 meters per second is the exact same as the regular Gauss rifle. Give it like 3K. This thing should be like a laser. If you're going to have it this much tonnage for that much firepower, 8 damage for 12 tons. Yeah, you're going to want a fast-moving projectile. But that's Gauss. But talking about Gauss, charge-ups for them. Because you can only charge up 2 Gauss rifles of any type at any time. So 2 heavy Gauss at a time, or a heavy Gauss and a light Gauss, or 2 light Gauss, or you know what I mean. Any combination of them, only 2 at a time. I actually think 2 heavy Gauss at the same time, while really short ranged, might be a little silly. It might be a little too powerful. It's a 50 damage front-loaded alpha strike for no heat practically. Like 4 heat for 50 damage. It's incomparable. So I'm really interested in that, because if you start changing out the Gauss charge limits, like heavy Gauss should, I think, only charge 1 at a time. Regular Gauss should charge 2 at a time, and then light Gauss should maybe charge 3 at a time. But if you change those limits, how do they interact with each other? If you charge a heavy Gauss, can you charge a light Gauss at the same time? If you charge a regular Gauss rifle, can you charge 2 light Gauss with it? Like, it just becomes weird. I know people dislike me, and I'll probably say this again in my other videos for different weapon types. I feel like this is a system that could have been resolved with the energy draw system, because you could have just put a really high draw on heavy Gauss and had it so firing 2 heavy Gauss together is unmanageable for heat. That would make it so the heavy Gauss is this one-off thing you would want to have by yourself. But as it stands, we have to have these silly charge rules where something like the light Gauss, you can only charge 2 at a time, but it's only 16 damage. It's just the same as a regular Gauss rifle, which further pushes the light Gauss into obscurity, because you won't, like, if you can put a light Gauss, you can somehow get 3 more tons to put a regular Gauss rifle on there. And it's just better. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the Ballistics. Some interesting new weapons with the racks, and some ones that are falling into these holes, these gaps that our current systems that only had to manage one weapon type, the Gauss, now has to manage 3 different weapon types, the Gauss, light Gauss, and heavy Gauss, but with the same rules, which start to break apart. But that's going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching, and good hunting.